the Discourse on Language by Michel Foucault. So first of all, what does the Discourse on Language talks about? So it talks about how Michel Foucault judges the institution for how it gives power and redistributes it. So this also causes anxiety as to what discourse is. Okay, so first of all, Michel Foucault hypothesized that in every society, the production of discourse is at once controlled, selected, organized, and redistributed. So next is the rules of exclusion. So in every society, we also know that there are things we can say and we can't say. So the institution picks those who may speak of their discourse and those who may not. And those who may not will be deemed as deviants.
Before I start off, I want to ask, what makes a discourse part of something true in our society that constitutes reliable objective knowledge? Let us first head to the concept that Foucault has developed, which is the discursive field. Discursive field as part of his attempt to understand in-depth relations between language, social institutions, subjectivity, and power. Discursive fields such as law or the family, which contains numerical degrees of competing and contradictory discourses with varieties of power to give meaning to and organize social institutions and process. To add up, these institutions also offer a range of modes of subjectivity. Okay, now having this in mind, it follows up to the argument of Foucault in the order of discourse that the order of discourse has the wheel to truth and is the major system of exclusion that builds up discourse and in which tends to bring out a sort of pressure and some sort of power of constraint to other discourses.
Disciplinarity is one of the many ideas that Michel Foucault tackled within the discourse of language. We can quote him from an earlier work where he said, a system of control in which the production of discourse. That is how he defined discipline within his other works. But within the discourse of knowledge, he said, in a discipline, unlike in commentary, what is supposed at the point of departure is not the same which must be rediscovered, nor an identity to be reiterated. It is which is required for the construction of new statements. For a discipline to exist, there must be the possibility of formulating and of doing so ad infinitum fresh propositions. Within disciplines, yes, there are people who have been studying the same thing over and over again, but within a discipline, everything is subject to change. There is a possibility of new statements all the time, especially with the amount of research put into certain disciplines. In discipline, there is control within commentary or within the discourse of people within it, because there is a control with the amount of people who understand jargons and words within a certain discipline, and there's also just a certain amount of people who can speak within that discipline. Thus, disciplinarity is not just like commentary, but disciplinarity adds control within discourse, and it adds a possibility of change within discourse. That means that we have to keep up with it, meaning only certain people can keep up with it. That's why it is in control with a certain people. That's why, like how doctors, how they discover certain things and certain medicine and certain stuff, they only keep that to themselves for a certain while because they have to control the discourse that goes within it. And that's why they always have fresh propositions, because of discovery and not because of rediscovery and reiterating a certain idea. Rather, they create new propositions, or they create new statements, new ideas to construct better discourse within that discipline.
Will to truth and will to knowledge. True discourse was pronounced by men who spoke as of right, or true discourse was pronounced by men who has power. True discourse, quote unquote, prophesied the future, but that this doesn't mean announcing what was going to occur. The definition of will to truth. Will to truth is a changing system of inclusion into truthfulness that governs scope and use of the knowledge. The will to truth relies on institutional support, which is both reinforced and accompanied by whole strata of practices such as pedagogy, publishing, libraries such as learned societies in the past, and laboratories today. It is even more accompanied by the manner in which knowledge is employed in a society, the way in which it is exploited, divided, and in some ways attributed. A century later, the highest truth no longer resided in what discourse was, nor what discourse did. A division emerged between Hesiod and Plato, separating true discourse from false. It was a new division that true discourse was no longer considered precious and desirable, since it's no longer discourse linked to the exercise of power. In 16th and 17th century in England, a will to knowledge emerged, which sketched out a schema of possible observable, measurable, and classifiable objects. The will to knowledge determines what truth is and what kind of truth is important. According to Michel Foucault's belief, will to knowledge is reliant upon institutional support and distribution. It tends to exercise a sort of pressure, a power of constraint or restriction upon other forms of discourse, which he is referring to our own society, like in the way Western literature has, for centuries, sought to base itself in nature, in the plausible upon sincerity, and science, in short, upon true discourse. The two other principles of exclusion continues to grow more fragile and are now invaded by the will to truth, while the last principle grows in strength. Since the time of Greeks, true discourse no longer responds to desire or to that which exercises power in the will to truth and in the will to speak out in true discourse. Then what then is at work, if not desire and power? Well, true discourse is incapable of recognizing the will to truth, and the will to truth is kind of like truth it seeks to reveal that can't fail to mask it. Therefore, only one truth appears before our eyes: wealth, fertility, and sweet strength. In contrast, we are unaware of prodigious machinery of the will to truth, with its vocation of exclusion. All those people in our history have attempted to remold this will to truth and to turn it against truth at the very point where truth undertakes to justify the taboo and to define madness.